Welcome to Romance Roundup, weekly recap reviews of Crave original TV series, Heated Rivalry, based on Rachel Reid's best-selling hockey romance, airing on HBO Max. I am Liz Donatelli.
And I'm Libby K, author of the romance series Pine Grove FD. Books 1 through 3 are available now.
Watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance channel and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to Romance Roundup on PodBean and all podcast apps. Follow us on Instagram at LibbyKAuthor and at Reader Seeks Romance. Hello, Libby.
Hello, Liz.
All right. So what are your initial thoughts? And then we could go more into depth on the episode entitled Rose.
My initial thoughts are this might be my favorite episode yet. And I feel like it was heartbreaking in two very different ways. That is what I will say. I feel like the first half was heartbreakingly sweet, and the second half was just heartbreaking.
Well stated. I'm going to say that this was my least favorite episode.
Gasp.
But there's still 2 more episodes to go. So by the end of this series, this episode might not be the one I like the least.
Well, and I will say there is no way this will be my favorite when the series is done unless they really fudge up the cottage episode at the end.
Honestly, I just want to skip right to the cottage episode. I feel like
God.
We've already earned it.
Well, and we already saw a little taste of what the cottage is like in this episode, which I literally squealed.
Yes, what a tease that is for everybody that they threw that in with Shane. What was he on, a television show? Showing off, doing an interview at the cottage.
It was perfect.
It was. So I actually have just 3 big major notes to discuss about this episode.
Okay,
so,
that's good because I've got about 1,000.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll start because they are in chronological order. So I will, okay. So my first note is I call this episode the montage music video episode because it begins with a montage and it ends with a music video. So we get a summary of Shane and Ilya's relationship over the summers between 2014 and 2016. And there's just constant montages of them individually working out, then competing against each other on, in hockey games, then having sex with each other when they're in each other's town, then texts from each other, then Shane's endorsements and Ilya's partying, and then it starts all over again with working out and competing each other. So it's like cyclical for like 3 years. And I was like, okay, all right. Like I almost fast forwarded. It's like, I get the point. Let's get to Rose.
No, see, and that part I actually liked because I felt it did a good job of showing that all Shane does is work and all Ilya does is party. I really liked the scenes where they would look at the printed schedules and then they would text each other. I felt like, it was probably only like a 3-minute montage before the opening credits. I felt like that was I actually found it to be a pretty concise way to show that like these 2.5, 3 years have been basically the same. And that's why I felt like it was like a good jumping off point to show, in my opinion, Shane being sick of only working and Ilya being sick of these, relationships that lack any depth or connection.
Right. Well, you're probably right.
Well, thank you. Show's over.
You're right. Like I definitely agree with what you're saying. I also found myself getting annoyed. Like I just wanted, I guess because I know what the episode is about, or at least what it should be about. And I was just like, all right, let's just get to it. Now, obviously, the next thing I'm about to talk about is, I think, the crux of the episode, which is Boston. And Boston is everything because that is when Shane visits Ilya at his house and there's the tuna melts scene.
Bumblebee tuna.
And there's a heart. Yeah. Honestly, like this was to me the heart of this episode. And I would have liked, honestly, this episode just to begin with this. And, just maybe just a voiceover that said, so over the summers of 2014 to 2016, they texted and they played. And then after that 30-second voiceover, then we go right into Boston. Um,
They
but
should do a special Liz Donatelli cut, and that's all it is, instead of a
yes,
director's cut.
yes, and it's just me with voiceovers, just skipping things. Um, Now, I thought it was interesting. I know that maybe this, well, actually, I don't know how anyone could have missed this, but there is a very gratuitous naked ass shot of Shane. And while I did appreciate it, I was like, interesting that it's almost like he's standing there in front of the camera and you can almost hear someone saying action. And then he walks over to the bed where Ilya is. And it's like, okay, great. So we got, a naked ass shot. I was like, okay, well, that was gratuitous and a good time, but it seemed to hold a little long. I was like, am I supposed to be getting more out of this? Is there like a hidden meaning behind this? So I don't know. Were you pleasantly surprised by the Shane ass shot?
I mean, I wasn't complaining about it. If anything, and I have a note that just says "but," because as I've discussed, my husband, bless his heart, watches this with me, and he was happy that Rose Landry's butt was in the show for a whopping 2 seconds. He's like, "Ooh, a girl butt."
Yeah, and it was a thong that Rose
Yeah.
was wearing. It's interesting because I thought maybe we'd see a little bit more of Rose's body in the sex scene at the end, but alas, it
Yes.
was just the thong shot. And then you see Shane's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go." And Ilya asks him to stay, which
Oh God.
this
Yes.
is this episode shows what I believe to be this whole episode should just be called Heart because we get to
Mhm.
the heart of a lot of things, and this is Ilya showing his heart in this episode. Ilya asks Shane if he wants a tuna melt and makes him a tuna melt,
Bumblebee tuna.
and Shane is just like, I don't know if he seems shocked or just like, oh, okay, yeah, you can give that to me, and ginger ale, which seems to be his
Yes.
beverage of choice.
Well, and I actually have an entire page of notes. God help anyone who's listening today, because I've came with notes. I have a whole thing on the metaphor with ginger ale and Shane in this episode, based on my assumptions of what's going on. I feel like the number one thing when this first happens is it proves that Ilya's paying attention to Shane, obviously, and what his drink of choice is. But if you pay attention during the episode, the only other time someone mentions ginger ale favorably is when Hayden makes the joke at the aquarium that Jackie always has ginger ale when he comes over to their house. Now, when Shane's out with his parents, the restaurant doesn't have it, and he almost gets guilted into having a glass of wine, which he does not want. And when he goes to the bar later before he meets Rose, the bartender kind of shames him for trying to order it, and he ends up getting a beer. So my thought is, we always joke and call ginger ale magic sky juice because I usually drink it if I'm on an airplane or if I'm sick. But I
Yes.
always think of it as like a comfort drink. And so I feel like maybe this is some metaphor that like Shane is comfortable with Hayden as a friend, even though he hasn't come out to him yet. And obviously he is comfortable with Ilya, and Ilya is going out of his way to make sure that this comfort drink is available for Shane. And it's not just that he has it, and just like in the book, he's asking, is it cold enough? Does he need another one? I feel like there's just something about ginger ale in this episode that like Shane is only getting what he needs from like two people in his whole life. Do you know what I mean? And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, and I obviously put a lot of thought into ginger ale.
What you've just explained is really deeply insightful and I'm sure dead on because it definitely tracks. Yeah, well done.
I feel like I just did a book report.
And now I feel like an idiot because my note later on is when they're making out after the tuna melt scene and it leads to sex. I said my note is tuna melt breath?
Ew.
Question mark, question mark, question mark. So you have deep, profound insight, and I'm like, oh, but they must taste like tuna.
Bumblebee tuna.
No, I thought that too. All ginger ale comments aside, as someone who is married to someone who hates seafood, I always feel like I have to eat my tuna melts in secret and then like drink a bottle of Listerine. So the first thing I thought when they started making out, I'm like, you just had sandwiches.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't just me.
No, it was not just you, trust me.
It wasn't just me. The tenderest scene where Shane just begins, they're sitting and just, shooting the shit about hockey. And, Ilya's like, hey, do you like girls? It's like, I do. I guess he's trying to get at, is Shane bisexual? What's his deal? And Shane just lays his head on Ilya while they're sitting on the couch, and Ilya pets his hair. And then there's just, this Shane's kissing him, and it just turns into a very hot but deeply emotional scene, which ends, of course, with Shane saying, I can't do this, and abruptly leaves, Ilya.
And he abruptly leaves in Ilya's shirt. And I wanted a scene of Hayden being like, where'd you get that shirt? Because he comes in his white t-shirt and he leaves in Ilya's black t-shirt.
Wow. Did you watch this episode more than once?
I watched it twice.
Okay. All right. Because for a minute, I'm starting to think, was I semi-conscious during this episode? Because I'm like, I don't remember any of that.
No, I also was having flashbacks of college film class when we had to watch Psycho. And I remember talking about like the changes of her wearing white in some scenes and black in others. And so I think when I saw it the second time, I'm like, oh my God. But I was thinking of it more since Hayden was teasing him. I'm like, is Hayden going to notice that he came back in a different shirt? But we never got to see anything with that.
The other note I wrote was their sounds of passion and coming sounds are A+.
Can I just say, when he spits in his hand, Jesus Christ.
I wrote down spits in hand for lube. And because I just didn't know how to put into words how like sexy that was in the moment.
Yes. Do you think that was Shane distracting Ilya from him being sad about the conversation with his father? Or do you think that was Shane just going back to what they're used to, which is physical connection? Because they had cuddled, they had that nap together. I was trying to decide with the TV show if Shane, or maybe it's both. Maybe that's both. Like, what was Shane's goal with this? Because I feel like Ilya as a character and Connor as an actor. Connor is Ilya, right? Yeah, Hudson's. I always get them confused.
Yeah, Hudson.
I feel like his portrayal of Ilya, he's very tactile. He's always touching things. I've noticed he tugs his ear a little as almost like some type of comfort or coping mechanism.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I wrote down Ilya is chilling on the couch. Why is he playing with his ear? It's a choice. Meaning, like, is this an actor's choice? Like, but it was distracting. And I'm like, I think we're supposed to be paying attention to the fact that he's doing that, which fits in with him being a tactile character. Yeah.
Yes, because in the book, I know he's always touching the crucifix, and in the show, they're always zooming in on the crucifix.
Yes.
And I don't know if this was, the director's choice, the actor's choice, but I just feel like in this episode, Ilya is almost in every scene touching something. You know what I mean? Like, well, we all know what happens in the last scene, but I feel like he's constantly touching something, whether it's grabbing the drink, tapping on the bar when he got frustrated. Like, there was always something where he was in motion or touching something. And so I was wondering, is Shane, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, reaching out to Ilya in the only way that he knows they can do, because they usually don't sit there and talk about feelings. Yes.
Right. That's an excellent question. And I have two interpretations. So at that moment when Shane initiated the tender moment leading to some hot sex, I immediately thought, because he can't find the words, and communication, like verbal communication, seems to be a challenge for him. I said, he's communicating his care and love and his unspoken answers through this act. So even though that's typically, it seems, Ilya's thing is communicating physically, I feel like Shane is maybe even influenced by how Ilya communicates that way. And now he's like, oh, well, this is a way I can communicate to him because he'll receive it. And I feel comfortable now doing that. So I took it as that. But then when he got up right after and said, I can't do this, I changed my interpretation and said, that was goodbye sex. I felt like in that moment, he came to the realization, this is too much for me. I've got to make this, a really impactful moment and then skadoots. I need to leave. So I think it was
Yeah.
really goodbye sex. A
I can
goodbye
see
moment.
that. And in the book, it was, that was when, and I think I read something a while ago where Rachel Reid said the tuna melt scene is when Ilya really fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that, is kind of when Shane freaked out and was like, holy crap, this is more than, when
Yeah.
he says his first name, which was adorable and I almost cried.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like,
Yes.
yeah, I think he just got overwhelmed and,
Which is probably why he looked like a deer caught in headlights when Ilya's like, "Oh, do you want a tuna melt?" Because it's like, "Oh, this is
yeah,
domestic now.
yes.
This is becoming serious." What were his feelings during that scene?
I think he did. I think he was simultaneously loving the domestic part. And I think when he said Shane instead of Hollander, I think if memory serves, because I've read a couple books since I reread it, I
Mm.
feel like there was a freak out of, oh my gosh, he said Shane. And I think
Okay.
in the book, he even says, you called me Shane. And Rosenoff was like, means nothing. Like, I felt like there was a moment where he tries to, like, don't worry about it, but I'm still going to make you dinner. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Yeah. I gotcha.
So yeah, I felt like there was more push and pull in the show, which is great. Like I still
Yeah.
loved it. Um, but yeah, the scene, because I think he says Hollander twice when Shane gets up to go. I felt like the
Yeah.
first one was like a Hollander, like, hey, what are you doing, Hollander? And I felt like the second one was kind of like a plea, like, Hollander, like, don't go, like, please.
Yes.
And it was, oh God, it was just, I felt like he knocked it out of the park this entire episode. Like every time Ilya was on screen, I felt like his expressions were telling a full story.
Connor Story, who plays Ilya, I think he's an extraordinary actor.
Yes,
Extraordinary.
they
Uh,
both just have these nuances. And this episode, I felt like Ilya really had more of that.
yes.
Um, than I felt like maybe it was episode two. There were a couple moments where I just felt like Shane's expressions just gutted me. And I think the point of this episode was more of Ilya's feelings. At least that's how I interpreted it.
That was my interpretation as well. So, being we both think that, then that is correct.
Works for me.
So, it's during this scene that I wondered if Shane is an autistic coded character, given his difficulty to communicate and his social awkwardness, which I really feel was amplified during the whole tuna melt scene, with them even just sitting casually on the couch. So I researched and I
hmm
found that some online sources state that Rachel Reid has confirmed that Shane is autistic. However, a public statement has not been made by the author. So
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. Rachel Reid doesn't seem to be shutting down any of these,
Ideas.
rumors or
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah. So I don't know if it's just that Rachel wants us to just decide for ourselves, but there's a very strong argument online for Shane being autistic. I know when I read the book, that did not occur to me. Was that something that occurred to you in any way while reading, even the second time?
No, no, I didn't get that vibe. I've always thought that Elia was and again, I hate to just go back to like the old terms of introvert, extrovert, because I know that that's not at all what the autism spectrum is. But when I read it, I always got the vibe that Elia was more extroverted, yet more sensitive. And I felt like Shane was more introverted and just did not share things as easily and was a little slower to pick up on some cues. But again, I wouldn't have thought when I was reading it, like, oh, it's obvious that Shane's autistic. Now, if I reread it now with the show in mind, yeah, maybe I would pick up on some things to kind of go with the thought that he might be coded as autistic. So, yeah,
Right.
I mean, I could see it either way. But this episode for sure, especially over episodes one and two, I definitely thought this is more than just him in the relationship. I felt like every scene of him had something that felt like it was a little more than just being shy.
Right. Yes. And I just wanted to crawl into his mind in those scenes,
hmm
with the tuna melt, because I said there's so much going on behind those eyes right now, and
Yes,
I wish I
yes.
could be reading the internal monologue. If I was going to rate just by scenes throughout this season, not episodes, but just the
hmm
scene, I would say that the tuna melt scene, from the moment he was served the tuna melt to the minute to the minute he left and said, I can't do this, I would say that scene is among my top 3 favorite because of it being compelling and just so emotive. That's how I've been thinking of the series now. It's just in, what scenes are my favorite?
Totally.
And I would
Because
say
I think,
that one, yeah.
I mean, when I think about episode 3, it's so hard because going into this show, and I've read the whole series. I love all the books. But going into the show, I've just been like, where's Shane and Elia? Where's Shane and Elia? So I feel like last week it was perfect. No notes. But I feel like Scott and Kip were not what I was in the mood for. And I was waiting for the tuna melt scene.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why right now this is my favorite, is because it's like freaking finally.
Right. And I did see a headline mentioning Scott and Kip returning in season 5, in episode 5. So you were correct because you said that they would probably be coming back in episode 5.
I mean, they have to if we're getting the. Not to spoil anything, but if I've seen a million things saying episode 6 for the finale is the cottage, and you can't have the cottage without some closure.
Absolutely, exactly.
I'm just saying.
No, you're right. So my third big note is weeks later in Montreal. So the last 5 minutes of this episode is essentially a music video for the remixed version of 2002 hit song, All the Things She Said by Tattoo, and I do not hate it. I was like, this is a delight. However, I did after a while be like, okay, this music video is great. The music matches the scene.
Yes.
It's so intense. Shane and Rose are at a club dancing. Ilya ends up at this club. He picks up this chick and is making out with her while eyeing Shane. Then at some point, Shane is just openly standing there on the dance floor, just eye to eye with Ilya. Like the two of them, they're eye talking and eye fucking each other across this dance floor. And I was like, would you just stop the music and have them have a conversation? Like I just so desperately wanted them to talk. I just wanted him to have as easy a conversation with Ilya as he did with Rose, because Shane and Rose have a really great, like, kind of meet cute friendship that leads to them dating. I want him and Ilya now to like go into a hallway of this club and like just have a conversation. And I know that's not how it goes, but although I thought in the books there was a conversation. Was there? No. Okay.
And that is my only complaint with this episode.
Okay.
Is the differences between the book. That scene of him standing there happened in the book because I remember the internal dialogue of him basically thinking, and now I realize I'm standing in a club staring at Ilya Rozanov.
Yeah.
And the thing that was different, and I'm hoping people will chime in and say, yes, you're right, or no, you're crazy, because I want either confirmation or a correction. I feel like in the book, the girl that Ilya was dancing with refused to do anything else with him. And he wanted to go home with her, but she was basically it was a cuck situation. Her boyfriend was watching, and she basically just wanted to get revved up with Ilya and then went home with the boyfriend. I felt like the way the episode was done, it looked like Ilya chose to go home alone. And in the book, he didn't. The only woman that he was paying attention to said no, and then he just goes home. And whereas Shane sees Ilya, freaks out, and leaves, and the sex with Rose is off page. So I understand why they did it the way they did it. Again, there's no internal dialogue. But that was the only thing I felt like if you didn't read the books, it looks like Ilya's like, oh, I'm so heartbroken. I don't even want to go home with this girl. But in the books, he was heartbroken and he still tried to go home with the girl. And so that's my only complaint. And again, it's kind of like my complaint a couple weeks ago with the Sasha scene. I know he was there as a plot point because you can't just, have the internal dialogue. But that was my only thing, was it looked like Ilya chose to go home alone and he was rejected by this stranger that just kind of compounded everything. So that's, again, my only, and it's not really a complaint because I just said it's my favorite episode so far, but that was just something that, for as good as it was, and I loved how the music played into it and how, the lyrics, and again, you're right, it felt like a music video and it was a great song choice. But I just felt like that one difference, I think, can shift people's perceptions if they haven't read the book.
It'll be interesting to see And God help them if they do not get the cottage right, because you will
Oh
burn
my God.
down Crave's corporate headquarters.
I will either be institutionalized or arrested if they
Yeah.
mess up the cottage scene.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any in any of the last two episodes, if there's any room for them to make these tweaks that could kind of I don't want to say mislead, but send us in a certain direction, lead us down a certain road that someone who read the book wouldn't go down.
Yeah.
How long does Shane and Rose date? Because in the book, I feel like it was like a chapter or something, or half a
Yeah,
chapter.
it was I feel like it was maybe a chapter, maybe two. And I feel like and again, I have no notes with how they've done it because I feel like her interaction with Miles, although he didn't dance with them in the book, I don't think.
Is
The scene where
Miles
he's like
Rose's
grinding up behind Shane, I'm like, I don't feel like Shane would be okay with that. Because I
okay?
felt like in the book, when Miles made the comment, or she said, I want to dance with Shane, and he said, don't we all, or so do I, or whatever, that I felt like was where that ended. And I felt like it was just him and Rose on the dance floor. And I felt like the actress did a great job of like body language wise. Like you could tell he was crawling out of his skin, as she's like reaching up under his shirt and stuff. Like, you just looked at me like, oh, Bunny, like bless your heart. Like you're struggling here. It was
Yeah.
heartbreaking. I thought he did a great job with like his facial expressions. And all that. But I'm curious to see because a lot needs to happen before we get to episode 6, especially with how much they've shown of Scott and Kip. So I'm curious to see next episode. I feel like and I'm not going to spoil anything for folks who haven't read it, but I feel like there's 4 key parts that need to happen before episode 6, unless maybe there'll be longer episodes because I think they've only been 45 to 50 minutes.
Quick question going back to Miles, Rose's friend. So I interpreted that scene as, does Rose have a feeling that at this point, because eventually I think she figures it out, right? And that's
Yes.
when she's like kind of initiates like, hey, I don't, we need to break up. I was wondering if at that point she already was thinking Shane might be gay or bisexual because she seemed totally cool with Miles,
Yeah.
very suggestively, grinding against
Yeah.
Shane's backside. I was like, oh, wait a second. Does she have an inkling about? I mean, interesting
Well,
choice for that
and
to happen.
again, once we get to that point, and I was kind of hoping it would all happen in this episode, but again, for
Yeah.
television, I understand why they left it where they left it because I mean, for God's sakes, it ruined my Sunday night for Pete. Like I literally
Yeah.
watched it. I'm like, well, time to go cry in a corner. But I feel like there will be a moment where he comes up in conversation if they follow the book. It's very fleeting. It's not anything crazy, but I guess maybe that's them setting up for that she's kind of already onto him. But
That
yeah.
that was my takeaway from it.
I think the casting and the scenes with Hayden so far have been perfection. The aquarium scene is exactly how I remembered it in the book with the kids
Okay.
running around. But the one thing that was weird, why did they change one of the twins' names? Because in the book, it's Ruby and Jade. And Shane has this rare moment where he like has a thought of like that's kind of mean that where he says that those names were a choice. And so it's funny that they named him Ruby and Emma. Like, why change one of the names? Because I felt like that kind of went with the whole vibe of like the gemstones.
Right.
So
That's
it was
a
just, yeah,
random
like it was
thing
a
for
random
them.
thing. I'm like, why would they change that? But who knows?
Yeah. Maybe the kid wasn't a great actor and only answered to their own name.
Well, and we didn't even see the twins. That
I
was what
know
I
you
thought was
didn't.
interesting. He's just yelling, and it was perfect. Like I thought that scene, well, I mean, not
Yeah.
for parenting, but I felt like the scene was perfect with like their friendship and putting the pressure on for Shane to bring a girl around, trying to
Right.
set him up with someone else. Like I thought they did that perfectly. It felt like exactly what I envisioned from the book. I remember when they announced the show months and months ago, and Rachel Reid did a post about the right way to make a tuna melt. Because I didn't realize that, and maybe I don't know if it's a Canadian thing or a Rachel Reid thing, but it was this whole open face versus like what I would consider coming from the East Coast, with like an actual tuna melt. You put butter on the bread, you put it on the griddle, and you make it all smushy and melty. And
Yeah.
it was open face in the book. And she made such a big deal about like, no, this needs to be open face. And so they didn't even show the damn sandwich.
That was another thing. I didn't write it down, but I did think. I was like, well, where the hell's the sandwich? We never get to see the tuna melt, which I was annoyed by.
I know, and I want one. Like I've been craving an American one.
I do not crave tuna melts, but
Oh no,
yeah,
that's like such a childhood memory. I don't know. I just
no,
remember like I won't go into it, but I just love tuna
yeah.
melts.
No, I like my tuna cold, not hot.
See, I will go for a nice tuna salad sandwich as well, but there is something about like the gooey cheese, usually cheddar or Swiss, or a combination if I'm feeling naughty. And it has to
Okay.
be like super smushy bread that gets toasty in the pan. We could do an episode just about this.
Yeah, but we're not.
Yeah.
So, are there any other notes that you would like to mention before we wrap it up?
Okay, hold on, let me check. Just to go with your music video idea, I wrote
Yeah.
down it's another Feist song. The Feist song they played at the beginning for the montage at the very beginning before the credits. I thought that was another great song choice. And it looks like, I don't know if it was a sarcastic post that I saw online, but it sounds like they are going to have a soundtrack for the show that you can get the playlist for. So I'm like, all right, don't tempt me with a good time. This is just a couple of throwaway comments for people who have read the series. I loved right before they ate the sandwiches when they were sitting far apart on the couch, and Ilya mentions Ryan Price because he is the hero, one of the heroes of book three. And I was kind of hoping we could have gotten their interaction in this book. Unfortunately, the timing has passed. That would have already happened if they're following the Heated Rivalry timeline. But it excites me now that we know there's a season two, when they drop these little gems of the character names. So
Yeah.
totally excited for that. Because I loved Ryan Price. He was such a little teddy bear. And I'm curious, and I'm not sure if we're going to have time because there's only 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
But at the very end of Heated Rivalry, there used to be in the previous editions a bonus chapter called Dinner with Hayden, and that's when Ilya and Hayden meet in the official capacity. And it is one of my favorite little scenes. It's silly, it's sweet, and I'm curious if that's going to be in the last episode or if they'll allude to that later. But again, the Ryan Price mention and that are two things I'm really hoping we see. And yeah, I am eagerly awaiting next week, well, this week already, because of both the Scott and Kip storylines and picking up with,
Mhm.
sweet baby Shane and his jumble of emotions. And yeah, I loved it. I can see what you mean though, because it really was only 2 scenes if you think about it, compared to all that we got last week. Oh my God. If you don't think I am still playing the scene of Scott jumping over the couch when Kip was in his glasses reading, that literally is playing on a loop in my head.
I remember reading that bonus story where
Mhm.
Ilya and Shane go to Hayden's house for dinner, and it's like this is like their first official outing, social
Yeah.
outing as a couple. And it's funny because I remember that, I think, even more clearly than many parts of Heated Rivalry. I would love for that to be the last
Yes.
scene in the cottage. Like,
Oh God, I hope so. I
I
hope so.
that would be great because I remember really feeling like that put a nice little bow on things until you read the second book, The Long Game.
Exactly.
So yeah. So fingers crossed for that. Tune in next week when we recap and review Heated Rivalry Episode 5 here on Romance Roundup.